On this Saturday night, high-stakes diplomacy. The Prime Minister touches down in Europe to talk trade and securing a ceasefire for Ukraine, as thousands of Ukrainians gather in Kyiv and Canada calling for an end to Russia's war.
I know my grandma can't sleep whenever there is strikes.
Emotional reunion. A man mistakenly deported to El Salvador reunites with his family in the U.S., why he now faces a new threat. More turbulence for Air Canada, why many flight attendants reportedly plan to vote against the deal that ended a crippling strike. Plus, marriage on the Midway.
You may kiss the bride.
Long-distance love story that won this Ontario couple the chance to tie the knot at Canada's largest festival.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The Prime Minister has just arrived in Europe. Mark Carney will spend the next few days meeting with political leaders to discuss securing a ceasefire for Ukraine. He's also shoring up economic alliances in the face of President Donald Trump's trade war. The trip includes stops in Germany and Poland, and that is where we find our David Akin, who is traveling with the Prime Minister. So, David, what can you tell us about Carney's agenda in Europe?
Well, Jeff, Canada and the European Union these days, of course, are facing a common set of issues. First, dealing with the fallout from Donald Trump's global tariffs. And then, of course, there's the war in Ukraine. Prime Minister Mark Carney will spend a day each here in Poland, Germany, and Latvia, starting on Monday. He'll be accompanied by Defense Minister David McGuinty. And the two will be visiting with Canadian Armed Forces personnel who are stationed in Poland and in Latvia. Both countries, of course, are playing key roles deterring Russian aggression and supporting Ukraine. Now, in his discussions with the leaders of all three countries, Carney will be looking for ways to help Ukraine achieve a ceasefire and defend a ceasefire. But leaders will also be looking at ways to improve their economies and diversify trading patterns, again, in response to Donald Trump's tariffs. Poland is Europe's fastest growing economy right now, and while he's here, Carney is expected to sign a strategic partnership on energy and security with his counterpart, Donald Tusk. In Germany on Tuesday, Carney will meet with business leaders who have a particular focus on critical minerals.
There's a broad range of areas from critical minerals to energy and defense and security where we are intensifying our discussions with Germany. Many opportunities.
Carney's trip in the next week builds on work that he started back in Kananaskis, Alberta at the G7 summit, and then a couple of weeks after that at the Canada-EU summit in Brussels. Both of those were held in June. And government officials traveling with the Prime Minister are telling reporters that it is a high priority for the Carney government to bring Canada and Europe closer together, and that's what the next week will be all about. That said, it's a relatively quick trip. The Prime Minister is expected to be back in Canada Thursday. Jeff.
David Akin in Poland tonight. Thanks, David. The Prime Minister's trip comes one day after he announced plans to drop retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods covered by CUSMA. That's the North American Free Trade Agreement. To discuss further, we're joined now by John Manley, former Deputy Prime Minister in Jean Chrétien's Liberal government. Mr. Manley, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. What was your reaction to the government's decision to drop these tariffs?
I wasn't honestly that surprised by it. We were only one of two countries that had imposed retaliatory tariffs that didn't exempt anything that was subject to a free trade agreement, the other country being China. So that wasn't good company for us. The Mexicans had already moved in this direction. And I think for Canada, the biggest prize in this whole thing that whatever it is that we end up with, we're hoping to preserve as much as we can of that USMCA or CUSMA trade agreement.
Right. And the criticism we've heard from the political opposition, as well as Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union, and others, is that the Prime Minister keeps making these concessions with nothing tangible in return. Do you worry that risks undermining our bargaining position?
It's easy for us to think that we have a strong bargaining position. We have some challenges in that. Clearly, the U.S. market is way more important to us than ours is to them. So we need to, I think, take that into account. And secondly, we've all been saying this, tariffs are dumb. Tariffs are a stupid thing to do. because they're not paid for by other countries. They're paid for by your own domestic consumers. So if we think that's true and that it will ultimately be realized by Americans that this is costing them money, then why would we impose tariffs on our own consumers? That's not a sign of strength. That's a sign that, we're just as dumb as they are.
And we're almost out of time here, but Mark Carney, as we all know, campaigned on elbows up. That message helped to get him elected. Does this reversal hurt him politically, do you think?
Well, I think he has to explain it, and I think it can be explained. But I think there's no doubt that elbows up is still the sentiment of the Canadian population. I think Doug Ford has been very good at channeling that, I guess, zeitgeist of the Canadian population in ways that Mark Carney probably should not, given that he has to deal with Donald Trump. But I think Canadians are still elbows up. But let's be smart. Gordie Howe, that's where the expression came from. He didn't put his elbows up the moment he was tripped. He'd wait. He might even wait till another game, and his elbows would go in somebody's ear. So, let's play this smart. I think that's what we're counting on Mark Carney to do.
All right, John Manley, former Canadian Deputy Prime Minister, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
As mentioned, Prime Minister Carney's trip to Europe is also focused on security for Ukraine. This weekend, Ukrainians around the world are marking the annual celebration of Ukraine's independence from the Soviet Union 34 years ago. Our Nathaniel Dove joins us from an event in Toronto. Nate.
Yeah, Jeff, it's a rare day of celebration for many Ukrainian Canadians. But even so, the words complicated and bittersweet probably best describe the festivities. That's because many people here say it's hard to celebrate Ukraine's independence when Russia is trying to extinguish it.
It's really hard being away from your country, your native land, and not being able to go back safely.
Sofia Yaveltska, born in Ukraine, says it's nice to share her culture, but Moscow always launches more attacks during Ukrainian holidays.
It always pains me because I know my grandma can't sleep whenever there is strikes, so I always try to call her whenever I can.
That is the constant refrain, glory to Ukraine. That and condemnation of Russia.
And I'm disappointed with President Trump as well. He should be putting a hard line that Putin doesn't get an inch.
Roughly a week after the U.S. and Russian presidents met to discuss ending the war, there's been little progress. Trump again says he will decide what to do in 2 weeks.
And that's whether or not it's massive sanctions or massive tariffs or both. Or do we do nothing and say it's your fight?
In an interview to be aired Sunday, Russia's foreign minister says meaningful talk requires more talk.
Putin is ready to meet with Zelensky when the agenda would be ready for a summit. And this agenda is not ready at all.
An expert believes Trump wants a quick solution while Putin wants to delay, and that his goals still have not changed.
He will use this diplomatic theater to pretend that he is trying to get some resolution and what he calls peace, but ultimately Russia is still after the complete subjugation of Ukraine.
In Kyiv, the celebration is somber and defiant.
Slava Ukraini.
People here say the next Ukrainian Independence Day will also be hard to celebrate. They know Ukraine won't be conquered next year, but they wonder how much of it will still be free. Jeff?
Nathaniel Dove in Toronto. Thanks, Nate. It was an emotional homecoming for Kilmar Ábrego García, reuniting with his family after he was mistakenly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador. That case has become a political flashpoint in the U.S. crackdown on immigrants. And as Candice Cole reports, he's now facing a new threat from the Trump administration.
An emotional reunion for the man who has become the face of President Donald Trump's immigrant crackdown. Kilmar Ábrego García, home with his family in Maryland, 160 days after his wrongful deportation to El Salvador's notorious CUSMA mega prison.
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for all of the people who have marched, been out in the streets, all of the faith leaders. I'm so grateful for them, and I want them to know that we have made a closer step towards justice, but we still need more justice.
Ábrego García was released from custody Friday, still facing human smuggling charges. His status in the U.S. far from secure. Shortly after his release, Ábrego García's attorney filed a motion for his case to be dismissed, accusing the federal government of trying to coerce him into taking a plea deal or be deported to Uganda. According to the filing, federal prosecutors tried to get Ábrego García to push his release date to Monday and plead guilty to smuggling immigrants into the U.S. In exchange, he'd be sent to Costa Rica and granted refugee or residency status. But when Ábrego García refused that offer, his attorneys were told the Department of Homeland Security intends to deport him to Uganda, and he's been ordered to report to Immigration and Customs Enforcement Monday morning. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem taking to social media, accusing Maryland federal court judge Paula Zinnes of being publicity hungry, vowing to, quote, not stop fighting until this Salvadoran man faces justice and is out of our country. Ábrego García's release comes as nearly 2,000 National Guardsmen are expected to be activated across 19 states to help the Department of Homeland Security with immigration enforcement efforts. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
There could be more turbulence on the horizon for Air Canada passengers. A report from Reuters suggests many flight attendants plan to vote against the tentative agreement that ended a crippling strike this week. 10,000 flight attendants will begin voting on that deal on Wednesday. The four-day strike affected hundreds of thousands of passengers, including one family that was separated from their young children. Matt Bingley reports.
How are you doing? Come on, cheer up.
It's been a turbulent week for Sandeep Lahiri and Sophia Batra after what was supposed to be a week-long trip for their sons to visit family in the U.S. has stretched into a 2-week ordeal.
This time they were going to fly together for the first time. That was going to be a new experience for us.
It's not an experience any of them wanted when their 10 and 14-year-olds' flight was canceled in the wake of the Air Canada strike. The airline offering at one point to get them back, but that involved flying through Cleveland on another carrier with a long layover.
I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to let my kids go from Newark to Cleveland, stay in Cleveland for 16 hours. Where are they going to stay? Not knowing there is an adult to take care of them. And what is the guarantee that the flight from Cleveland to Toronto is actually going to take off, which is what happened. It was canceled.
Complicating matters further, Lahiri says when he booked the flights, Air Canada's agent told him they didn't need to travel as unaccompanied minors with ground staff supervision because one of his sons was 14 and the boys were booked under different reference numbers.
They said, no, it's all taken care of. Don't worry about it.
Finally, the couple had enough and are driving to New Jersey to pick up the boys this weekend.
It is a stressful situation. I know my kids are safe, but for someone to sit here and think that when my kids are going to return home, suppose we were in a situation where we were not able to drive, what would I be doing?
They hope by telling their story, the airline will review its policies for minors. Air Canada declined our request to comment on the story.
And Air Canada, it's an airline. You have to take up responsibility. You have to be more sensitive when you have children traveling.
The couple says they need to hear assurance changes are made before they book with Air Canada again. But for now, they're just eager for a long overdue reunion.
I am going to be there in front of you tomorrow.
Matthew Bingley, Global News.
The fight to spare hundreds of ostriches from a death sentence. Coming up, the BC farm hoping to save its birds. An ostrich farm in BC is vowing to continue its fight to save hundreds of birds from being killed. The farm just lost a federal court bid to stop the cull, which was ordered over concerns about the spread of avian flu. That long-running legal saga has attracted attention and anger from around the world. Victoria Femia reports.
An almost 8-month-long battle with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency ending in tragedy for an Edgewood ostrich farm.
Our lawyer called us today and let us know that a 41-page document came in. That was a unanimous no.
Universal Ostrich Farm lost its final appeal to stop a cull of about 400 ostriches after dozens of the birds were infected with the avian flu last winter.
Sets a dangerous precedent for farmers that we can't test our own animals for their health, that our animals are not our own animals, that It seems like they're government-owned, not independently owned.
The farm argues the birds have been healthy for more than 200 days, developed herd immunity, and should be studied for future viruses. But the court found the CFIA acted responsibly in its decision.
We will be trying to apply for that emergency stay order that won't be in until next week. So we're sitting here this weekend with an open call on the ostriches.
Following the decision, the CFIA said it will conduct the necessary disease control measures to protect public health and minimize the impact on the country's poultry industry. Animal Justice slammed the Federal Court of Appeals decision, saying the public outcry is why the CFIA must reassess its disease control policies, especially in cases where animals appear to have recovered and transmission risks may be considered low.
Stamping out is a dangerous policy. It should never be a one-size-fits-all solution for all farmers.
Under the Compensation for Destroyed Animals and Things regulations, the farm could receive $3,000 per bird, totaling about $1.2 million in compensation. But the owners say the money doesn't equate for the lives lost.
They have personalities and names, and they deserve the right to have the decades more of life that they have in them.
With an unknown timeline on when the cull will happen, Pasitny is hoping the Prime Minister will intervene. Victoria Famiak, Global News, Edgewood.
Still ahead, a Toronto family's call for action after their child was killed by a stray bullet. Calls to end gun violence echoed across Toronto this week after an 8-year-old boy was killed by a stray bullet. Jeff Roy's mother gathered outside Toronto City Hall on Friday with other mothers whose sons were also victims of gun crime. Karen Lieberman has their story.
A community grieving the loss of a young child killed by a stray bullet while at home in bed is now nearly a week later demanding justice.
We do not want Javay's death to be for nothing. Canada does need to step up and create change within our communities.
At a rally outside Toronto City Hall, amid drumming and sage burning, there were calls for an end to gun violence.
We need to stop them from coming across the border. Those that are already in the city, we need to get rid of them and make sure that there are enough programs for young people so that they don't pick up the guns in the first place.
At a candlelight vigil Thursday, Jeff Roy's heartbroken mother urged the community to remember her son's name.
I want his memory to be good because he was a really good little soul, way beyond his time.
On Friday, other mothers who've lost their own sons to gun violence came to show support.
This could have been anybody's child. This could have been everybody's child. And matter of fact, if we had the community raising our children the way it's supposed to be, because it takes a village to raise our children, then this wouldn't be happening.
How do you wrap your head around this happening again to someone else's son?
I can't really wrap my head around it. I don't understand how people can just blatantly shoot people and not care about their families, about their lives, about their own lives.
The Indigenous Youth Agency behind the rally has launched a petition and is calling for changes to the Youth Criminal Justice Act and stricter bail laws.
Young offenders, they commit a very serious and violent crime. They're charged and they're also released back into communities where there is no accountability, there is no restorative justice.
Jeff is being remembered as a young anti-bullying advocate and an integral part of the First Nations community in Toronto. There have been no arrests made in the case. Karen Lieberman, Global News.
An exhibition of love coming up. The Ontario couple saying "I do" at Canada's most famous fair. Welcome back. The Canadian National Exhibition, also known as the X, is Canada's largest fair. The annual event in Toronto runs from mid-August until Labor Day, and it draws more than 1.5 million visitors for carnival rides, concerts, and corn dogs. But this year's event also marked the culmination of a love story. Lexi Benedict explains.
Patrick, you may kiss the bride.
A couple says "I do" under the iconic super wheel, making history at the CNE. Both in their 60s, Toronto bride Jacqueline and her groom from Ottawa, Patrick, were doing long distance for 25 years. After officially tying the knot in May and winning the CNE's Marriage on the Midway contest, their love story came full circle right here at the heart of the fair.
I look forward to every road trip, every quiet night at home, every August at the X, and every adventure still ahead. Happy and thankful that my wife and I were able to continue our relationship and solidify it by getting married today in front of the Midway.
Well, we hear so many love stories, right? Like so many people come up to us and say, this is where I met my partner. This was my first date. This is the place that we fell in love. You know, so it seems like a natural extension to have a wedding here and to really celebrate that.
And out of more than 400 applicants, Patrick and Jacqueline's story stood out.
That's what's in a marriage that we share. It's a place for joy, happiness, excitement, and we just love it.
Jacqueline says growing up in Toronto, the CNE was a yearly tradition with her family and where she got her first job. When she met Patrick, it became a tradition they did together. Did you ever think that you would get married here?
Oh, no, not at all. This is a dream. This is a dream, and we're blown away by it.
A love story that has traveled the distance. The couple hopes sharing their story inspires others to never give up on love. Lexi Benedict, Global News.
How's that for a happy ending? That is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada showcases this month's Kerry West Parade in Edmonton, a giant flag in Ontario's Charleston Lake, and a very patriotic and brightly lit home in Delta, BC. Please keep sending your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Have a great night.